tonight on the Cover One Buffalo podcast, you will join us to talk Bills Steelers wild card preview with Neal Coolong of Sports Illustrated. But first, our guys, Handsome Jack.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL.
Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, how much does a week change things? It's wild. We were sitting here, hoping that everything would go to plan to get into the playoffs, and all of a sudden now we are the 2 seed hosting the Steelers as a pretty prohibitive playoff favorite as far as those things go. It is crazy how quickly things shift.
I knew this was going to happen all along, so I don't know what you're talking about. I was super prepared to be exactly where we're at right now, so I don't know what you're talking about. Don't look at my tweets. Don't watch past shows.
Do not research that at all.
Yep. No, I knew we'd be here.
Yeah, it's obviously it's been a crazy roller coaster of a season. The Steelers are actually fairly similar. We've had a lot of back and forth, a lot of crazy games that they've found ways to win and to hang around in these. At one point, we were 6-6 and on the outside looking in, they were 7-7 on the outside looking in, and getting back to this point is pretty crazy with different outlooks from where they are. But let's go ahead and bring on our friend Neal. We've had him on before. You guys know him well. Neal Coolong of Sports Illustrated. Neal, how we doing?
We're doing well. I hope you guys are as well. As always, I am super happy to be here. This is without question the best podcast spot I do in a year. I'm excited to be here.
Appreciate that. That's awesome. So as Aaron and I were talking and getting things kicked off here, it's been a roller coaster. There are obviously different expectations, I think, for the two teams coming in, and the disappointment early on or in the middle for the Bills really kind of messed around with things. The Steelers, as every Mike Tomlin coach team seems to do, just finds a way to win games and continues to kind of club those things along. But there's been some odd shifts as the season's going, none more prominent than a change at quarterback and obviously injuries impacting things. Where is the mind of the fan base of, hey, we're in the playoffs, but how is everyone kind of managing the weird shifts and the change of quarterback, the injuries, everything that's going on right now?
I can't speak for the entire fan base, but that's
exactly what we want you to speak for everyone.
Most of the ones I speak to, honestly, the season's over. I mean, they you got to understand that the chaos that you referred to earlier, the Bills having a slide, that's really different. This is normal for the Steelers. This is every year for the Steelers. Straight down to they need to win and somebody else needs to lose to get into the playoffs. And it usually comes down to the other team needing to lose, pulling out the win, or choking like Jacksonville did. They need help at the end because they go on these weird slides. Now, when you lose for the first time in NFL history to 2 teams with 2 wins after week 12, back-to-back weeks, throw in a third loss to a playoff contender in a game that you barely competed in, then change your second quarterback to go with your third, a guy. The only reason he's on the roster is because the NFL expanded reinstated the emergency quarterback rule. And he's better than all 3 of them, than the other 2 probably combined. Mm-hmm. This is normal for the Steelers. They're like this all the time now, on top of almost miraculous resurgence of a run game that was left for dead by week 4 in the season. Now it's legitimately one of the best in the NFL. An offensive line that was, what's the word? Terrible, dumpster fire, whatever you want to use. now is a pretty strong unit for what they're doing. Mike Tomlin's ability to make chicken salad out of chicken beep later in the season is his superpower. Most of the fans, though, don't look at it like that. What they look at it as, what took them so long? Why did they need 13 weeks? Why did you start Mitch Trubisky again? Why do we continue to have the same conversations about who you have at quarterback when it seems like the guy that you had, riding the pine as third string is the best one? All normal questions. So to be honest, for Steelers fans, I think you complete the cycle with a blowout loss in the playoffs, because really that's kind of the way that it's been. I'll say this: Pittsburgh has played well. I think that the two hotter teams in the AFC going into the playoffs are Buffalo and Pittsburgh. The one team I think Pittsburgh really would not want to play would be Buffalo. I think that's their worst matchup. They would have been much happier with Kansas City or Miami. Baltimore can't beat Pittsburgh for some reason. I'd feel better about that game. Where they are with Buffalo, I think just looking at it on paper, most fans are just kind of like, yeah, 10-point underdogs will lose by 17. So, we'll tune in, but we're not expecting a whole lot.
I want to touch on the quarterback play specifically. Obviously, we know it's a quarterback-driven league. We were just talking about Justin Fields a little bit offline here. My brother's a big Bears fan, and talk about how they're never going to get out of that rut until they find it, right? But then the Steelers come around, and they are kind of in that same rut of they don't necessarily have a quarterback, right? Going into the season, Pickens was the starter, but there wasn't a lot of confidence that he was necessarily the starter. And then you had Mitch Trubisky, who's supposed to be one of the league's best backups. And to your point, they didn't play up to the level of now we're seeing Mason Rudolph. Do you think that it's because when I only watched back 5 games this weekend, right? For this, usually I just do 4, but I went back a little bit further to see what this offense was looking like. To me, and let me know if I'm wrong here, Neal, is it necessarily that Mason Rudolph has played better than those guys, or is it that the offense is running better and that they're establishing a run and they're taking some of that pressure off the quarterback and he doesn't have to do as many things as they were asking of Pickett and Trubisky to do, and that the offense is running and then anything you get from Mason Rudolph is extra? Or is Mason Rudolph actually taking this to another level in your opinion?
I think all of those things can be true. So, I mean, my answer would just be yes. I mean, the offense absolutely is working a lot better. And you have the offensive coordinator change in week 11, week 12, some point in November. They made the decision to move on from Matt Canada. They promoted Eddie Faulkner to coordinate the offense, and they have Mike Sullivan calling plays. Right out of the gate with Kenny Pickett, you saw an immediate return on that investment. They played well.
The very
against
first
Cincinnati.
Game was the first 400-yard game,
and it was that was honestly like 2 games worth of offense in one. I mean, they scored on more than one drive. They didn't need a special teams touchdown to score 16 points. It was weird. They were able to start hitting on a few things I think they tried to do, and it certainly helps when you get everybody's attention. Like, we're serious now. We never fire coordinators or head coaches in the middle of the season. We just did that. Now it's on you guys. Okay, you got what you wanted. Now it's on you. But they slid after that. That's when the real slide started. They got destroyed by Arizona. Absolutely destroyed by Arizona. Lost to New England, a game they should have won 5 different ways. They played very poorly and barely competed against Indianapolis. In that stretch, you're not extolling all the virtues of this new offense, the new offensive coordinator. Everyone's still blaming Matt Canada for everything. Enter Mason Rudolph. Now, you lost Pickett due to injury. You benched Trubisky, or I should say Trubisky benched himself. Legitimately, 2 of the worst games I've ever seen a quarterback play in the NFL by somebody not named Johnny Manziel. It was that bad. Bring Rudolph in. Rudolph, what I've been kind of saying about him, and not to be too dramatic, but he's Cinderella man. He is a completely different player now compared to the last time he played. The last start he made was in 2020, Thanksgiving against Detroit. Detroit was terrible back then. Yep. A 16-16 tie. They scored 16 points and didn't get 400 yards in 5 quarters. Okay, that's how miserable it was. And Rudolph, he was indecisive. He has happy feet. His head's bouncing all over the place, and he doesn't move around the pocket in a way that suggests to you that he has any confidence in what he's doing and what he's seeing. He's the opposite of that now. Blame opponent, blame atmospheric conditions, blame the stock market, whatever you want. I don't know. But Rudolph is a vastly different player now. And yes, you can put some of that on an offense that has recalibrated itself. It's found its fastball. It can do a few things now. The plays are a little bit different. Everyone says that it's all the same, playbook coming from Matt Canada. That's not true. They're doing different things. You can't roll out an entirely different offense, but there are things that you can do in concert with what you used to do, which is kind of what was not happening with Matt Canada. Rudolph, though, is the straw that's stirring that drink, in my opinion. Everyone's going to put it on the run game. You're right, though, Aaron. He's not being asked to do a ton, but what I know is in the clutch situations, what Mike Tomlin would call the meaty downs, he's stepping up and he's playing the game like a man, which is not what they've gotten out of their quarterbacks for the last 2 seasons, probably. And it's a welcome change in the sense that you feel like you have a quarterback that can step up and deliver a big throw while getting chin strapped on 3rd and 8. He's going to put the ball where his receiver needs to have it to make the play. And their offense continues to move down the field with the help of a very good run game.
Well, I think that's been the interesting part here is I'm kind of digging back through and watching some of the things because, it's easy. There's been a stretch here where the Bills and Steelers have played at the same time. So a lot of this was on rewatches where I would see like the highlights and different pieces. And I see the 71-yarder Diontae Johnson. I see the 86-yarder, to George Pickens. And then I go back and be like, oh, well, in the rest of that game, besides the Diontae Johnson, he went 17-19 for 81 yards. So it's accurate. It's efficient. It's playing within himself. And you see some where he's putting the ball up, especially with Pickens, like the weapon he is along the sideline. But it's, hey, we're going to continue to move the ball down the field. And if you guys break one, that's great. But I'm not going to put the ball at risk. I'm going to let our defense kind of keep it under control. And then, like you said, leaning on this run game, it's been interesting because early on you heard a lot of people, even like in the fantasy football community, about the lack of efficiency from Najee Harris and that he was just plodding and slow. And, oh, look at this dynamic, explosive Jaylen Warren. And he has looked fantastic. And at the end of the year, it's almost flipped back. And we've seen maybe not quite as much from Jaylen Warren. And now Najee Harris looks like a bell cow monster. How has that's been the biggest shift in the offense? How have they figured out how to get the best out of Najee Harris, who is a guy, the person to my left here, loved coming out in the draft and wanted Najee Harris badly? How have they figured out how to reharness that athleticism that we're now seeing in this late stretch?
I think there's a couple different reasons. Somebody in the comments pointed out that the usage of gap versus zone, I'm not 100% sure they're doing more of one or the other, but Najee Harris is 5 times the runner in zone than he used to be. I don't know what happened, but the biggest knock that I had on Harris to this point as a pro is he has bad vision. He just simply doesn't see what's going on in front of him. And the difference is why Warren made all those big explosive plays is because he ran zone. He can cut back and just go. He's got great vision, great feet. He's a good athlete, probably a better athlete than Harris is. Harris was running primarily gap, and he just kind of went one place and ended up where he was going to end up. I saw a lot more in the last couple of weeks out of Harris cutting back, making plays to find space, get his body forward. And with that, he's making more explosive runs. Now, he had a decent amount of 20-yard carries, but it was like he wasn't doing the 7 to 9 kinds of carries. He wasn't getting those very often. It was like a 20 every 30 carries or so, and everything else was 1 or 2. That has changed. He's found lanes, and I feel like they were there, and Warren showed that they were there. But Harris has been the guy and should be the guy coming off of a game in Baltimore, going back to your point as far as the passes that Rudolph was completing. Both teams were throwing short. They were playing in a monsoon. Rudolph had the one big play, the one big pass of the entire game for either team. But look at Rudolph's numbers compared to Tyler Huntley. Huntley is more experienced than Rudolph is. Huntley's getting paid 5 times as much money as Rudolph is. For Rudolph to play the game that he did on the road in a must-win environment says a lot about his leadership ability, his ability to kind of put the team on his shoulders when he had to, throw to Johnson on Johnson's deep completion. I mean, Johnson did the most of that work. And well, to be honest, if you look at this, the Ravens safety, I forget who it was, Williams or the other guy.
Horrible angle.
Oh,
horrible
man.
angle.
Like, that's a cuttable. That was really bad. But it was a dime. Rudolph still put that thing on the money. You got to give the guy credit for that. But Harris
90% completion percentage. You got to be pretty accurate on that.
In a day like that, and the Ravens dropped a bunch. Their quarterback wasn't as accurate. It's a small sample. I get it. But the bulk of that was Najee Harris. Harris kept the offense going when they needed it to go. They got the big play finally. I would probably expect a lot of that this weekend. They're going to run the ball. Hopefully they can make a play in their passing game, but by and large, what they're really going to want to do is protect, possess, and not let Josh Allen out on the field to run at, poor Nick Herbig out on the edge, the little guy that's having to fill in for TJ Watt. You hope as a Steelers interested fan, you're hoping they're able to possess the ball and slow down Buffalo's offense that way, if they're able to do that. And that's it's a tough order playing on the road in the playoffs. You earn the 7th seed, you earn the 2nd seed, and that's why we are where we are.
Yeah, I will say here before we get over to my side of the ball and continue to talk about TJ Watt here, I got to tell it all the time. Anytime Mason Rudolph gets brought up, I have to expose myself for I don't write a whole lot for Cover One, but I did a written piece in 2018 before the draft of 3 reasons why Mason Rudolph fit the process for the Buffalo Bills. But I bring that up into saying, like, I think he gets a lot of crap from social media just for he's kind of looks like he wouldn't be good at quarterback. And then you had the stuff with Myles Garrett where unfortunately for Mason Rudolph, it looked bad for him in terms of the memes and the things that were going on out there. And I think people just wrote this guy off, but he's actually a pretty good quarterback and a pretty good prospect. And he just came into a team in a weird situation and not believing in him. It needed some time, to your point, to develop. And so I do like seeing some, even if it's little, small sample size, some success for him because he was one of my guys, right? Let's go over to this other side of the ball. Obviously, we can't talk about this Pittsburgh defense versus the Buffalo Bills offense without talking about TJ Watt being out. And you talked about Pittsburgh fans' season ended 3 weeks ago. There was a few that I've talked to and that I've seen where even though they punched their ticket and they weren't off the season yet, as soon as they found out TJ Watt wasn't playing, then they said their season ended. I put out a tweet, something like, this guy's got 40-something% of the sack production for this team, 30% of the pressure production, 2nd highest snap rate. Like, I know big name players, like when the Bills lost Milano or Trey White, big name players are huge impacts. Is TJ Watt maybe the biggest defensive impact in the NFL leaving a team with an injury? Is that probably the biggest one? It's got to be up there with like Max Crosby, right?
Yeah, I don't think that's even debatable, to be honest with you. And then part of it is, look, big time players make big time plays in big time games. We've seen TJ Watt do that against the Bills a couple times in his career.
Week 1.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal player. There's no overhype for the impact that he makes on the game. You don't win easily when you lose a guy like that. So. Yeah. I'm measuring my words here because I don't want to throw him back in my face at any point in the rest of my career. But they couldn't. The Steelers themselves could not lose a more important player than Watt, and I think he would be 2nd and 3rd in their MVP balloting as well, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. There is so much that he does that's not calculated by advanced metrics, and it's not shown purely by sacks. For example, he lines up wide 9 pretty often, and that's not so he can get the angle on the tackle. He doesn't need an angle on a tackle. He beats most guys off the snap. He's wide 9 to protect the flat. With that, your slow ass linebacking group that you have in Pittsburgh doesn't have to move over to handle the spill on that side. Watt can take care of that, as evidenced by the fact that he has 8 pass deflections this year. He's not in coverage. I don't think they have cornerbacks with 8 pass deflections. That's another story, another problem. But he can change the game without rushing the passer and without dropping purely into coverage. There are so many things that he does. You're not going to replace him, and that to me, the second that it happened, it's like win or lose, it's fatal for the year. And it's unfortunate, but that's why he gets paid the big bucks. That's why he's going to be, I would assume anyway, if not the defensive player of the year, top 3. It's a great year for defensive players. I think any one of them can win it. I think all of them put up good arguments for that. But for him, this is the 4th year out of the last 5 that he will receive first place votes for defensive players of the year. And there's only like 3 guys ever, including his brother, who's ever done that. First guy to ever lead the league in sacks 3 times. He is a big time impact player, and to lose him for any game, again, I think somebody flashed the stat in here. They're 1-10. I didn't think it got that bad. I didn't even realize he missed 11 games, but yeah, they don't win when he doesn't play, and there's a reason. he's pretty good.
Yeah. I will say, though, they still got some guys, right? So let's talk about the rest of this defensive line here as a full unit. I won't do edge and interior. We'll just talk about the whole unit. You have Alex Highsmith, who is actually having a fantastic season too. In him, how much, and also Marcus Golden kind of coming in on the edge. With Highsmith, I've liked him as a long time for a player. He's a nice compliment to TJ Watt. Do you think the two of them, with the amount of pressures Highsmith's getting, stuff like that, like his rates of pressure, do you think they'll be able to fill some of that void, or are the high numbers of pressures from an Alex Highsmith because TJ Watt draws so much attention?
Well, I don't think it's as linear as that. Okay. It's not as if every single snap they're saying we got 2 guys to double 1 player. Which one are we going to do? You can mix things up. You don't double every single snap. Highsmith, it obviously is not the athlete that Watt is, but he's a technician. He's a worker. He uses his hands very well. He uses his body very well. He can generate pressure on his own. I don't know how much you would double team him purely anyway. If you send a guy to chip, that's not exactly a double team, and teams are going to do that anyway. He can make an impact. He's just not, TJ Watt left in the 3rd quarter of this game and he was defensive player of the week. Highsmith is not going to create that kind of impact, I don't think anyway, but he's been defensive player of the week in his own right. He forces fumbles. He can create pressure. It helps to have that, but this defense is largely predicated on having 2 of them. Perhaps more of the issue, though, has been, as you've seen, you said you watched the last 5 games. You probably noticed the plumbers and firemen that they've had in the back 7. They didn't have NFL level safeties for a couple of those games. They lost Minka Fitzpatrick. You're down DeMonte Casey, who was suspended. You get him back. Not necessarily sure if they even want him back. I think Eric Rowe has done a fantastic job for what they've asked him to, but they've got depth now on the back end of their secondary right in time to lose Watt. If they would have gotten all that back, they could finally play with their full defense again. It puts that much pressure on Highsmith, and with him, Marcus Golden, Nick Herbig, however they're going to split the snaps between those 2. And ultimately, again, on their inside linebackers, they've lost 4 inside linebackers this year. All of the guys they signed, all of the money they spent on inside linebackers this year is gone. We were all excited. The Devin Bush era was finally over. They're bringing in all these other guys. One by one, they all get hurt, except for poor Landon Roberts, who has a new injury every single week. And he's limping to the finish line right now. They've just been down a lot of guys. They've been able to overcome some of that, but when you're playing with TJ Watt, you can make up for a lot of sins, but you're not able to really get past him.
Yeah, so Greg just pulled it up here. Let's take a look at this injury report here before I go on too further with the defense. What, based on these, what was this, the 10th today? Here,
this was today.
Wednesday?
This is from today's. Obviously, TJ Watt, we know it's already been declared out.
Right.
Roberts was limited. Minka was full, in it sounds like that's trending the right way. So it kind of seems like, I mean, obviously TJ Watt's a huge one, but it seems like the rest of it's coming together reasonably.
Yeah, it's funny because that wasn't Robert's injury last week either.
That's a new one.
Heck's a new one for you.
Dude's a warrior though. He's a great
Did he get
player.
bingo yet?
Pretty much, yeah. And they need him badly. They really need him. I don't think they have anybody left to play. They called Miles Jack off the couch to come and play. They signed him. No, I'm not even exaggerating. They signed him and didn't activate him for 3 weeks because he had to get into shape. That's how low on options they were. Not even in shape to play when they needed him immediately. But Roberts will gut it out as much as they can. The Harris injury is newish, I think. I don't think he missed time against Baltimore, but they talked about it immediately following that game. That would certainly be the biggest one on here to monitor that you didn't already know about. It's nice of them not to fully declare Watt out. We'll hold hope for that first defensive series. If we don't see 90 out there, then we'll cry into our mugs. But Harris would be the big one here. Fitzpatrick said last week he was going to play after the game. I think they always had eyes on him making it back for the playoffs. And Simalu, I think, is an important one, but they knew about that. It didn't sound like he was going to be any risk. First practice of the week for the veterans, not going to be as big a deal. I would expect him to play, and at the very least, they get as much of their guys back as they can. But as you said, 30% of their pressures
when the first domino's out. It's tough.
It's tough. And so I'm really interested when I'm watching and I have a side of the ball, all I keep thinking about is how are the Bills going to attack this side of the ball, right? Or how are we going to go at this side of the ball? And all that kept popping off to me, Neal, was linebackers, tight ends, get that running game going. And even more so now, to your point, especially without Watt, am I right in that? Is that the weakness of the Steelers defense, is to attack the middle of the field, the interior of this defense, and specifically with tight ends, hoping that the weather holds up for some passing?
I think Baltimore did a good job targeting that middle zone against the inside linebackers. They weren't able to convert a few of them. They probably should have. They had a couple drops in there, a couple missed throws. I would say that's fair, though. You can get after that part of the field against them. They don't have athletes. And at that point too, you're seeing something called Trenton Thompson and Miles Killebrew in the back end for the Steelers. You can't attack downhill with guys like that. They're not going to be the athletes. I think Buffalo has that advantage. The 7 to 12 range, kind of an odd spot down the seam. They'd be able to hit on that. And it's a weakness that's been covered up by the fact that the Steelers get after the quarterback pretty well. That's going to be, obviously a little bit tougher to do. But if Buffalo wants to do that, and one thing I would probably suggest as well, I don't know how much of a challenge it is specifically to the linebackers, but if you get Josh Allen out on the edge, if Nick Herbig is on the field, move Allen in that direction. You can run zone out to protect him, but put somebody behind the linebackers. Give Allen the option to run against a much smaller, less athletic outside linebacker, and see what the inside linebackers do with the tight end coming across if they're running zone. I would imagine that'd be something they dial up a couple times, and I think they could have some success with it.
Yeah. And then let's finish it here with that back end. You talked about this one is probably the most difficult one for me, because when you lose Fitzpatrick, it's like a Poyer or a Hyde, even better. I think he's at a different spot in his career. So to pull that out, it's hard to get a real read on everybody, but I like what I see out of Joey Porter. I'm a big Levi Wallace fan. I don't know if you knew that about me, but I think I am a big supporter in adequate cornerback play in the NFL. I think it's a lot harder than people think to be just solid cornerback too, and he's pretty good. I don't know how he's been in terms of how Pittsburgh fans feel about him, but in the tape I watch both, but in the tape I watch, both of them seem to be they're in spots most often when they need to be. It seems like Porter's probably going to follow Diggs. Is that accurate assessment?
I think that's an interesting question, because again, I'm not trying to rag on the kid or anything, but if Herbig's on the field, I don't know. If Porter's going to trail, and I'm a running team, I would love to drag Joey Porter behind Nick Herbig and run the ball. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to be real hard to identify. That said, yeah, I mean,
you don't want Levi on Diggs.
You don't want, to be honest, you don't want Levi on the field. That's I love your point, and I want to get into that at some point. That's a fantastic point to make. I am also a huge believer in solid cornerback play. The average cornerback in the NFL is way better than they're ever given credit for, because they get abused in every aspect of this game.
The rules are so skewed.
Yeah, there's no way they can compete unless they're a top level guy. It's extremely hard to do, and they deserve respect. I was that way about Levi Wallace. He had a rough beginning of the year. It wasn't real good. To be fair, I thought he's played pretty well when we've seen him the last couple games. I think he might have fixed some things, and he's done all right. But Porter is a pure cover guy. He can't tackle to save his life. And you put him against 5'11", 245-pound Nick Herbig on that side with Josh Allen with the ability to run. That's a disaster waiting to happen. And if they're going to trail Diggs with Porter all game, and I understand why you would do that, but start him on one side, motion him to the other where Herbig is. That's a win. And that play before the ball is even snapped, that's a win. That said, Porter's going to be your best cover guy. You hope the refs put the flags away if you're a Steelers person, and see what'll end up happening. But, I said this on my podcast this morning. I'd be interested to see if Diggs, knowing, and you guys have heard me say this, I absolutely love Stephon Diggs, one of my favorite players of all time. He's not the physical player that DK Metcalf is. Very few receivers are ever going to reach that level, but the intensity, the competitiveness, I think he's watching tape of Porter and he's looking at what Metcalf did. And I think he's going to try to bully him up a little bit. Porter's probably got a little bit of size on him, but Diggs is nasty. And I'm not sure Porter's all that physical. So I'd like to see what happens there. If there's not some confrontation after the whistle, Diggs just trying to beat him up and wear him down and eventually just outmaneuver him, because he does that to everybody.
So one last piece, we already did some of the offense and talked about, what we've brought back with Najee Harris and obviously the quarterback transition and how Mason Rudolph's playing within himself. I think we didn't get a chance to go into how he's leaning on what I think people were excited about coming into the year. And when there was optimism about Kenny Pickett, it was like, hey, you have Diontae Johnson, you have George Pickens, you added Allen Robinson, you have Pat Freiermuth. Like, hey, there's a huge opportunity here to just play within yourself, utilize the weapons that are there. And if you're going to give Mason Rudolph credit for anything, he's setting those guys up to succeed and let them be good. Let them be good with the ball. Let them, make a play and run. A guy who I think has been, has obviously had some knucklehead moments, has had some moments here, but there's never been a question of the talent. And I don't want to, it's sacrilege to bring this up, but there are some Randy Moss-ish thoughts in my mind when I watch George Pickens run, that weird gazelle speed where his legs don't look like they're going that fast, but he's running past everybody else. How has it been watching George Pickens put together his first really full complete season of hey, I am going to be a guy you're going to have to deal with now?
There was a coach I talked to it's specifically about athleticism early in my career. And he said something that stuck with me always. The best athletes are the ones you see on the field that it doesn't look like they're trying at all. It looks like everyone else around them stopped. And that's George Pickens. As gifted an athlete as you're going to see, big, physical, he can play like that, but he tracks a ball deep like an all-star center fielder. I mean, he has just incredible sense of the ball in the air, and the breakout speed that he has when he's on a go route, when he's able to release, get inside a defender and go. There are very few that are going to have the level of ability that he has shown to this point in his career. That said, he has been a total chumbalone at times, anti-team issues that are fair and legitimate to criticize him for. When you see a play that he literally doesn't even get out of his stance after the ball is snapped and the running back goes off to his side, gets tackled at the half-yard line, if Pickens, by the guy Pickens is supposed to be blocking, if Pickens put up any resistance, that's a touchdown. When you see things like that and then you talk to him about it in the media, you ask him about it, he says he doesn't want to get rolled up on because he might get hurt. It's like, okay, that's not what I want to hear out of a wide receiver. You need to play the game, to put it mildly. But he does have that ability. Now, to his credit, he responded. And in fairness, they actually got him the ball. You know, all these things kind of need to come together. He's a young player. There is a sense of competitiveness that can come out and blend in a negative way with professional immaturity, with personal immaturity. I think to some degree that has been Pickens to this point. Nobody doubts his talent, but to be fair, he was a second round pick for a reason. I remember this at the draft. I had COVID over the draft that year. I was wiped out. I fell asleep after the Steelers took Pickett at 20 and slept through basically, I think, the next 8 or 9 picks, kind of groggy, went to bed, got up. The draft came the next day. It went through 7 or 8 picks again in the second round. And I saw Pickens' name come up at one point. And I was like, wait, that guy hadn't been drafted yet? Are you kidding me? And I was like, the Steelers are at 45. There's no way he's going to fall this far, right? No way. I went absolutely ballistic when they drafted him. You're not going to get a better pure football player in the second round than George Pickens. That said, you've got the concerns that we've seen him demonstrate. So really, you're getting both, and you probably should have expected to get both. So with that, a phenomenal playmaker. There are a lot of problems with the offense. There are a lot of reasons he doesn't make the plays that he wants to make, and he has a share of that. He has a share of that responsibility as well. The more they kind of
good
put
veteran
together,
like examples with Diontae Johnson's fumble recovery.
Get me started on him. Well, look, which one happened first? Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I was yelling about too. I went off for like 10 minutes on that.
I just have to interject as an outsider. The personality that Mike Tomlin has, how does that, like, that just doesn't seem like it's a mesh for to have two guys doing things that don't seem Mike Tomlin-ish, and not just once. Like, there was a couple different examples of it. It just seems weird to me.
I think Tomlin has aged to the point and has developed the maturity that guys are going to do what they're going to do. There's only so much he can do really to control it. What's he supposed to do? Grab by the face mask and yell at him? Yeah. This isn't Pee Wee, you know?
Well, he dealt with Antonio Brown too. He knew Antonio Brown was crazy before everyone.
Look at what
probably
happened
learned from Antonio Brown.
Yeah, Antonio Brown after
run
he left,
did they get out of Antonio Brown? You know, if
Brian,
he's a chowderhead and showing up late to meetings, it's the NFL. You know, that this is not the Army. They're here to do extraordinary things. If they're able to do that, they're going to be put in a position to do it. That's the reality of it. I think Tomlin has simply warmed up to that idea over 17 years as a head coach. They're not all going to be great team guys. You have to get the most out of them for where they are and for where they're going.
He manages the knucklehead factor as well as anybody.
Yeah, to be honest, it largely it's because he's not trying to resist it. And in a way, this is a dumb story, but a guy I used to work with always kind of bragged in a way how he would let his kid just go ballistic in public. And what he said was, because it's not me doing it, it's him. He's embarrassing himself. I'm going to let him get it out, and I'm going to continue parenting him the way I'm supposed to. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm not going to sink to his level. I think that's kind of what Tomlin does to some degree. It's like, well, look, he's being an idiot. As far as the Johnson fumble thing and the Pickens not blocking thing, though, I'm willing to bet there was conversations had in regards to that. And I think Diontae Johnson's a very good NFL wide receiver. I think he could certainly make hay with another team. I would not be surprised if they shopped him this offseason, because this stuff, he's done this a couple times. You don't need that when you're trying to build a team. Pickens has elite talent. Johnson doesn't. You know, he's a good player. You have a much better chance of finding another Johnson than you do another Pickens. And Pickens is cheap. Johnson isn't. So what Tomlin said about Brown was you put up with it until you don't have to, until he's no longer productive for you. I think Johnson's gotten over some of that, but it's absolutely an issue. And I think it's something they're going to address this offseason.
One last one here before we ask you for the prediction here. Steve asking, how big will special teams be? I don't know that I won't lie. I didn't spend a ton of time diving into it. How has Pittsburgh special teams been this year? I know Boswell has looked solid, and has that been a plus or a minus?
Boswell can still kick, but here's the thing. The Steelers just signed Brad Wing who was their kicker back in like 2015, to the practice squad. This is the second time they've signed him this year. As you saw, Presley Harvin's not on the injury report. I have no other reason to think why they would sign Brad Wing. That was a surprise move to the point where I was like, is this for real? It doesn't really make any sense, and I haven't heard a particular explanation on it. But if Harvin's not on the injury report in any way, the only reason they would sign a punter to the practice squad would be to bench their regular punter. Maybe that happens. I don't know. Harvin has been inconsistent, to put it mildly, in the weather. Didn't look particularly good in Baltimore. The weather is probably going to be very similar in Buffalo this weekend. Maybe they're looking to make a change. That would be quite the move, just be out of surprise more than anything. But Harvin holds pretty well. I don't think they have any particular complaints with that. I don't know. Because special teams came up, that's something to watch. But Boswell's a good kicker. He's kicked in all conditions. He'll make kicks he's supposed to make. Kickoffs largely just not even a part of the game anymore. I don't really think that matters. But for the Steelers, the punting would be the thing to watch, just simply because they might be benching their punter leading into a playoff game.
I gotta say, Boswell probably had the best moment for the Steelers this season. And when Matt Canada was coming down celebrating a victory, and he was like, "You didn't help," or whatever he said, he was like, "You didn't."
It wasn't because of you.
Yeah, it wasn't because of you.
It got a lot of run. I still don't think that was him.
No.
Not trying to be that guy. I've been 2 feet.
Let
from
us
Chris
conspiracy
Boswell speaking 20
interneters.
times. It's not him. It's not. Boswell is so mild mannered, and he has a southern accent that you wouldn't hear unless he's like yelling, and he doesn't speak very loudly. He wouldn't say anything.
Well, shout out to whoever.
Whoever had the guts to say.
I remember that.
Whoever had the guts to say.
That was a ride.
Yeah.
Good for them. So Neal, it's a weird game. I do think that there's a dangerous house money element here that I think the Steelers have no downside. I think that adding the variables of weather, in my opinion, normally benefits the underdog in situations like these. It can add in a variance that you don't know what's going to come of it. You can have weird things happen. Give us a prediction. What do you expect to see this weekend, and give us a score?
I think here's the way I see it playing out, just because this looks a lot like Steelers games in these types of situations. I think they're going to run with them for a half. Pittsburgh, I think they'll keep it close. I'm not exactly sure what the score will be come halftime, but Buffalo is just too much for them. I don't think the matchup will favor them throughout the game. They'll adjust. Steelers won't run the ball quite as effectively. I think Buffalo walks out 27-17 with the win. Reasonably competitive game, but the second half will belong to Buffalo.
And then what are you going to do with your season? Do you jump right into draft mode?
For me personally, yeah. I mean, my job has me all over the place. More administrative stuff than anything. But as far as the podcast goes, as far as just my Steelers fandom goes, always the draft. You know, they're coming off a great draft season. But I would say this: they've got. The Steelers have one of the more sneaky, underrated, interesting off seasons coming to them. They gotta make a decision on their offensive coordinator. I would imagine it'll be Eddie Faulkner, but you never know. He may not want the job. Maybe somebody else hires him. That could happen. You know, Nick Saban retired today. I don't think anybody saw that coming, even though we definitely should have.
Pete Carroll. I don't think I saw the Pete Carroll one coming.
I could see Pete Carroll more than Saban, oddly enough. You know, Saban, I think, kind of exists the way he wants to exist now. Carroll, I think, probably had to work a lot harder.
I still think
Saban recruit.
I think Saban's just mad all the players are getting money now, and Alabama doesn't have
the huge
full advantage. Yeah. He complained about it this year, saying the NILs. Yeah. Anyways,
that was Saban's weapon. Saban could go into the living room and get anybody because he could get the parents. And he knew that. He went after that all the time, and it's worked for him for 2 decades now. I was joking around with somebody on social media. I know I'm a Zennial age-wise because I remember a time Alabama wasn't all that good. It was forever ago now, and I didn't realize it until Saban retired. But what was his name? Andrew Zhao, I think. old quarterback. This must have been early 2000s. They won. I think they lost some junk bowl that I watched. I was watching with my dad, who was telling me all the stories about Bear Bryant. All this, Alabama always seemed like this old ancient.
I was gonna say, when I was young, it was always program. Like they used to be good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. That's how we know we're old.
We'll get there again, just like the past.
Yeah. All right, man. We appreciate it. Hopefully both teams come out of this one healthy. We've had enough injury issues going on, but make sure you guys check out all Neal's work over Sports Illustrated, all the good stuff you're doing, and hopefully we'll have a chance to talk again next year.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Neal.
Talk to you.
Oh, it's I don't love, like, we've had the back against the wall mentality for a while, and it's a playoff game, so it doesn't matter. Like, there's still that same mentality, but it is weird to now be back into, we've had so much run lately of, you just have to do whatever it takes, and having to flip those things around. It is odd all of a sudden to now be like, well, everybody kind of expects them to win. I don't love that feeling in this moment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to buy into what everyone else expects, because I've seen the 2023, 2024 Buffalo Bills, right?
We lost to Mac Jones. We lost to Zach Wilson. We don't get to take anything for granted.
Correct. And if the team doesn't, if the team plays down to another, in what I think and what Vegas thinks and what everyone thinks is an inferior opponent, then there will be no game that I have confidence in, right? If you can't go in and establish this, take advantage of the seeding. I saw your sub line was our lucky number is 17. Bills put out that promotional video, right? Of like, deal with the hand you were dealt. Well, you just got dealt pretty freaking sweet hand in this playoffs, right? You got the second seed. You got, maybe, not to diminish the Steelers, but maybe the easiest road in this wild card.
If you rank all 14 playoff teams, everyone would rank Pittsburgh 14th.
Do what you got to do. You're the second seed. Everyone thinks they're maybe the worst playoff team that snuck in. You got to go in and handle the business. You can't have one of these Mac Jones games. You can't have a Zach Wilson has a good game against you and something wacky happens and they end up winning. I know the Bills have been talking about how they've been in playoff mode for 5-6 weeks. Well, they lost a game. So they weren't really in playoff mode because they lost a game and they weren't eliminated. Now the stakes are for real. Like, you can't have these slip ups. And that's my concern. And to your point of like, yeah, it feels weird that we're supposed to win this game, but I've heard it before this year. And I hope that the Bills take that seriously here this week. And I think they will. I think they've had too many close calls and too many close lessons this year, and they know what's at stake.
So you're obviously living there and you have a better feel for this than I do. Do you have a feel for how serious the weather's going to be Sunday?
I don't. So I was looking it up. So I've lived here over a decade now. Lake effect, crazy, especially this many days out still. Like, it's hard
to project.
It is. And so I follow a couple people on Twitter that like take a look at European models and all these different models and try to come up with projections. There does look like there is some possibility for some lake effect. And I'm not a weather guy, but what I do know is right now the lake is like the warmest it has been recorded in a long time, which means if there is going to be an event, it probably won't be awesome. It'll probably be a pretty bad lake effect event. But right now I go by Weather Underground. I know some other people use other ones. Right now it only has 3.6 inches for all day on Sunday, which is still a decent amount of snow, but that's more like the Bengals game than some like crazy
we'll
lake
see some snow. We'll see some snow. It will be, they'll have, visible, but not like super impactful on the game itself.
If it's like a slow 3 inches all day and it's like a half an inch an hour as it goes, they'll be able to maintain that. Right now it looks like it's pretty steady going to be all weekend, really, actually all week that week. No, nobody cares about the week beyond that game, but as of right now it just looks like steady snow building up to a certain amount. But if lake effect kicks in, that changes everything, right? And we won't know that until we get closer.
Potential for wind and some pieces that way as well, so we'll see where that one goes.
And I do think you made the point to Neal, and I don't think it's a bad point, that usually those situations, weather is the equalizer for the bad team to the good team. So it used to be a benefit when we were in the drought era, and it's like, have teams come to Buffalo and maybe we can equalize with them. What I will say though, And the Bills learned this lesson sort of the bad way in that New England game. Josh Allen's like legit weatherproof. Like he's got 4-wheel drive. He's got those big old hands. And I still think even though it does make a little bit, it takes away from some of what you can do. I think Mason Rudolph can't do the things that Josh Allen can do in the snow. So I think it also still gives the Bills a different element. It's not that he's not going to have some 350-yard passing game in the snow, but he can, if it comes down to it and he needs to. We saw it in that win game. They started throwing the ball a little bit in the second half when Dable trusted into Josh, and he could actually throw it against the wind. And we should have been doing it the whole game, and we probably would have boat raced New England in that game.
And even if we have win this week, it ain't going to be the 60, 70, 80 mile an hour winds we had then.
Not that night. No.
That was like sustained 30 and 40 mile an hour winds with 70 mile an hour gusts.
Yes.
That's not what we're going to see this week.
Yes. And I will say, Josh talked about a little bit of his press conference. Some of the stuff of just the experience of playing in that kind of weather in this specific stadium should matter, and it should be a benefit to the Bills of the way the wind goes in this stadium. I don't know how much exposure Mason Rudolph has had to playing in bad weather snow games. Like I know these teams are from Pittsburgh, right? But that doesn't mean every player that plays for Pittsburgh has experience in playing in this. I know Josh Allen
he was Oklahoma State, so it's not like that's a bad weather area.
Yeah. And so like their equipment guys are prepared for Northeast weather, but like this sounds so silly, but does Mason know which cleats he's going to wear? Does he know which shirts he's like? Josh has all that stuff figured out. So there is a benefit of to a bad team, but I think the Bills have enough experience in this and Josh being weatherproof that I think it offsets some of that what would normally neutralize.
Yeah. So, as we get ready here, our friends over at Leftern are going to continue putting together fantastic things throughout the playoffs, although obviously it's a little bit different when you don't know the matchup. You can't do all the artistic work ahead of time. So each week during the playoffs, we will still see a limited edition playoff print for each matchup. It comes out later in the week. We'll probably have it out by Friday. So make sure to check it out. You can still grab prints from some of the regular season ones that are still available before they sell out some of the awesome gear that they have there, all kinds of different things. So make sure you're checking out on the website at leftern.co and make sure you're checking out all of our socials. They put theirs out on Instagram and Twitter and everywhere else that it's available. All the guys from Cover One will be sharing that as well to let you guys know what's out there and what's available. Make sure you check it out. Some of the different ones here. I want to give a shout out. I love the way that they did the World Tour tie-dye shirt. Those turned out really, really cool and were really awesome design as well. So all kinds of great stuff over at their site. Make sure you check them out. They've been fantastic to work with all season. It's been a pleasure to get to know Greg and Melissa and everything that they're doing, not only for Bills fans, but down in the community and in downtown Buffalo, and hosting all the different events, bringing people together, making it, feel good to be down in that area downtown. And I think that's a really cool thing that they've invested in as far as the community goes.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm still a little bit mad at Greg for that over that World Tour t-shirt, the tie-dye one, because I wanted one and they sold out before I was able to get in on it. And there was like a limited edition run or whatever. And I thought because we share music and we're boys that like maybe he would do one more, but didn't. And so now I'll never get that shirt. So
yeah, I'll send you pictures when I put mine on.
Yeah. As long as you have pants on.
So now we're in the playoffs. We've seen some different pieces here. We've seen them dabble. I think that in the moment, as I went back and watched the Bills Dolphins game again, it did help me recalibrate that. Oh, yeah, we did almost put up 500 yards of offense plus a 96-yard punt return. And all of a sudden, it kind of helped me rein back in that, okay, it didn't feel fantastic because the turnovers were, ugly, but 473 yards plus a 96-yard punt return, 26 first downs. It was actually a much better offensive performance than what it felt like in the moment, just because there was that constant, impotent.
Because we were mad at Josh. You can say it.
Yeah,
we were mad at Josh.
We were.
Yeah.
I feel a little bit better after going back and rewatching it that, all right, we were really moving the ball over and over and over again. I feel a little bit better about the offense coming into here and what they've been able to do from a balance standpoint of having, some shot plays mixed in, because that's what I kept asking for. I wanted more of those, and we started to get more, not, it doesn't have to be 70-yard bombs, but like more intermediate and deeper shots. We really started to hit on some of those.
I felt a little bit the opposite after watching it. I won't lie. I just felt more frustrated, Greg. Like, I still think firing Ken Dorsey was the right thing. I still think Joe Brady is a more creative, attacking OC. But these were the problems that led to Ken Dorsey getting fired. Like some of that was, hey, the offense is great. The EPA is great. The production's been great, but we're turning the ball over just outside the red zone. We're turning the ball over in the red zone. And some of them were fluky. Some of them you can't go get it back. But we also can't take back that touchdown that Trent Sherfield had. Like that's a wonky play that just happened to go our way, right? So like I just need to see just a little less variance, right? Like I want it to be the 50-point outing in a clean game. And at some point in these playoffs, though, where it becomes elimination football, like I don't think it's going to happen this weekend with the Steelers. But I mean, you let them hang. If it is like what Neal's talking about, it's a little bit closer in the first half, and Josh doesn't play a clean second half. Like you let a team hang around in elimination football with mistakes like that. And so my big concern is like, again, I think this offense can be productive against every single defense in the entire NFL. It is, can they take care of the ball and turn that production into points? And it doesn't have to be touchdowns. Like instead of turning the ball over, get those field goals, right? We got to get points on the board here throughout the playoffs. And so seeing that they went into a game where they probably should have scored more, probably should have put up 40 points, and they turned the ball over a bunch of times and put it in jeopardy, made it a one-score game, and gave Miami the ball back with a chance to tie. And just happened that our defense, Sean McDermott's on a heater right now calling this defense and save their butts. I feel a little like, man, I know this offense can produce. I know they can score points, but is it going to be a turnover or points? And I still don't have the answer to that heading into the playoffs, and that doesn't feel great.
Yeah, it's tough. And I think it's going to put us into a position where I think this week's going to be kind of ugly. I think with the weather of what's there, the different pieces of it. But the piece I feel the most confident in is Sean McDermott versus Mason Rudolph.
Yeah.
Like giving him different things of what he sees pre and post snap. I like having that we've got Daquan Jones back. Puna Ford is contributing. I think that's going to help from a run game standpoint because Pittsburgh has been running the ball well.
Yep.
I think we do need a good game from our defensive line.
Maybe no Dodson.
I am curious to see what we do there with a whole week here. Is it going to be, we saw that their answer to it this week in the moment surprised me when it wasn't Dorian Williams and we saw Balin Spector.
Right.
I obviously assume that'll be the case again, and that we'll do the managed snaps where we'll have Balin Spector in, and then, before it was Taylor Rapp, but now Taylor Rapp is dinged up. So does that mean it's Cam Lewis? Does that mean it's DeMar Hamlin? How do they manage that third safety spot? And with the team like Pittsburgh that runs the ball so much, I kind of expect it to be more base personnel, more bigger situations bodies where Spector's not coming off the field. You don't need the third safety. This could be a big Balin Spector game.
Oh man, I never thought I would. I typed it out earlier of like, I really hope that Dotson can go, and I never thought I would type that.
Yeah,
like heading into a playoff game. But this is the type of game, to your point, of running the ball where missing a guy like Dotson, like this was a conversation we had in the Cover One DM group a little bit on Balin Spector. Like he played okay. He played fine in spot duty, but it was 19 snaps. Right. So like heading into a playoff game, don't love not knowing what I don't know about Balin Spector in that role. Because it could be huge. If he misses a tackle on Warren or fills a gap the wrong way on Warren, dude, that's the kind of thing that could make a team that shouldn't be hanging around.
Jaylen Warren can take it to the house.
Yeah.
Like he absolutely can just completely take it to the house right there in that moment. And I think the fact that the defense played well, people have ran with the idea that, Balin Spector was awesome. Like he was fine. Like he did not get exposed. He did not, have a huge issue. He was targeted twice in coverage and he gave up a catch both times.
And McDaniel didn't get the chance that he came in spot duty. So it wasn't like there was a game plan to attack a young player, which I would think if he's going to play, the Steelers might have something 100%. To go at.
100%. Yeah. Get him out in space, whether it's Freiermuth, whether it's Jaylen Warren, whatever it may be, trying to be there. And the Bills are going to be in the spot, Sarah bringing up here about Rasul Douglas, there's a chance that he's going to need to miss a game, and that each of these different pieces, they need to be able to have guys. I feel a little bit better about in this matchup against Mason Rudolph. I think Dane Jackson is functional. George Pickens can moss anybody. He can go up over top of people. That can
That's
happen
a problem
to anybody.
No matter who's out there. Yeah,
correct. That could happen against Rasul Douglas too. Like
sure.
George Pickens is a ridiculous athlete.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel okay with Dane Jackson in this game.
Yeah.
I need Rasul Douglas back for a playoff run if we're going to win multiple games here. But for this game, I'm okay with that. It's actually the opposite with how good their run game has been. I'm more concerned about the linebacker spot here, and that, like you said, it's weird to think about this. I'm now concerned of not having Terrell Dotson. I didn't think I was going to have that concern early in the season. Now, especially his value coming downhill, coming forward against the run. That's where he's thrived. That's where he's played so well. They've, Sean McDermott's found a perfect way to manage his snaps and to not put him into, disadvantageous spots where he's, exposed out in coverage. Just let him be the downhill thumper he can be. Now, all of a sudden, we don't have that thumper.
Yeah, this would have been the perfect game for him to display all of his talents. You got a team that's running the ball well, bad weather. They were going to lean into the run even if the weather was good, but now they are for real going to lean into the run knowing that the weather is bad. And so, yeah, this would have been a great opportunity for him to shine. But again, next man up. One thing I will say, I think Sean McDermott got a lot of knock this year when you lose to a team like the Patriots, or you lose to teams you're not expected to, or play down to teams. Everyone talks about how you don't have your guys prepared. But what I will say, man, when guys have to come in spot duty for this Bills team, whether it was Balen Spector last week, Dane Jackson last week, we've seen all season, right? The battle of attrition, guys coming in, guys are ready to go. Balen Spector came in, hasn't played at all, and was ready to go in a game for the AFC Championship. Yeah, Vandermark played, right?
Protected Josh Allen's blindside with
no touchdown drive.
Ramp up, or for the game-winning touchdown drive.
Correct. And so, if we're going to dog on coaching for stuff we see, I think that also goes to having those guys prepared to step. I think that's much more harder than the average fan realizes, to just be cold, standing on the sideline, to jump into a football game and participate at an NFL level is a difficult job to do. And almost every time these guys seem prepared to do it.
Yeah, it's a definitely credit to the coaching staff and to everybody that they put together in this unit. So, all right, man, we've made it here. What do you expect to see? You get to go first.
Okay, I am going to go first. So I'll kind of mix it back into our last segment of fresh design, because one thing I wanted to bring up in the fresh design, I think will play into how I think the game's going to go here this weekend. So I am assuming the weather's poor, right? If the weather wasn't poor, I think this game is Bills score 30 plus, and I don't know, maybe they get 17 or something like that on the other side. I think the Bills would blow them out in terms of if it was neutral field, dome, or whatever like that. But I do think the weather is going to play a role here. I still think, I said this last week after we saw Shakir take that screen 40-something yards, especially in weather like this, I think they're going to stack the box. I think you're going to be able to run, but James Cook isn't really that. He's not Najee Harris in these types of conditions, type of running back. I think the Bills will still be able to run some and get some running game going. You have Josh to take some of that short yardage stuff. But if it is windy and the passing game's kind of struggling downfield, I want to see more Shakir gadget screens, getting the ball in his hands. Yeah, I think he's hard to tackle. And we talked about Joey Porter. We talked about Levi Wallace is a good tackler, but he's been up and down at times. Forcing those safeties to come up and make a play on a guy like that, I think this is where you can generate some explosives in a crappy weather game where they're expecting you to just pound the ball, hit a screen to Shakir, get him on a reverse, something like that. We see what he can do with the ball in his hands. I think they do something like that. They get one of these screens, jet sweep, something creative in this weather to pop, run out a little bit to an early lead here. I think Joe Brady dials up something pretty creative. They run out to an early lead. I've got this one going 24-14 in favor of the Bills here. And even with the weather, 24 felt like a lot for me. And I wanted to pick the Steelers to score less, but I do think Pickens is going to pop one. And I think there's a good chance Warren or Harris just has a drive where it's one of these annoying, it's like 10 plays. They're just running down our throats and they get some scores. They're going to score. But I think it's going to be too little too late. I think the Bills jump out to an early lead and then it's just kicking a couple field goals and they score some, just running that clock out the rest of the day.
Yeah, I'm in a very similar space. I do think I feel the most confident Sean McDermott versus Mason Rudolph. I think we can put him into difficult circumstances. I do think we see George Pickens will make a play. They'll have, I think your call on the drive of Harris and Warren putting together one. I think they score a couple times, but I think it's like 10 points.
Okay.
Maybe it's 2 touchdowns instead of a touchdown, a field goal.
Sure.
But I'm going to go 10 points. And I think the Bills will be fine, but I think this is also a tough defense too. I don't think that we're going to boat race them. And for as much as we've seen, they've had not their stereotypical Steelers season, they also haven't given up a ton to anybody here. Like there are just an awful lot of games where it's 13, 20, 17, 23, 21, 18, 13. Like they don't give up a ton. Like their defense is still good. I don't think the weather is going to be great. I think that we'll have some field goals. I've got it 23-10. I think that we're close. 23-10. I don't think that it's going to be, Neal's probably not crazy that maybe at halftime we're sitting there and it's 10-7 and Buffalo's winning 10-7 and everybody's like, man, that's not what I was expecting. And then we just kind of pull away, towards the second half. And I don't think it's going to be a crazy stressful game, but I also don't think it's going to be this dominant butt whooping that people are hoping for. I think the Steelers are a tough team. Them running the ball, the weather variable, I think it's going to be kind of an ugly, slow game. And honestly, all that matters is find a way to win and move on and survive. Try to stay healthy. Try not to get any more injuries. Live, fight another day. That's it.
Yep. I agree.
All right, man. What's going on for what do we got breakfast sandwich wise? What do we got getting ready for this weekend? We're in the playoffs now.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Yeah, actually, I feel like I have not been given enough credit for how impactful the breakfast sandwiches have been to this run, right? I kicked them back up. Bills have only lost 1 game since the breakfast sandwiches are back. So I'm just saying my EPA is pretty good. My CPOE is pretty good. But yeah, no, breakfast sandwiches will be fired up. It's actually birthday weekend here at the Quinn house for me.
Hey, you're going to officially be old.
I'm going to enter the 40s with the rest of you old guys. And so we've got some festivities. It's going to be a fun weekend. I think it'll go by quick and hopefully a Bills victory, a wild card victory. I won't get the birthday present that Josh Allen gave to me a couple years ago when they smoked the New England Patriots literally on my birthday. But I do think I'll have a nice
perfect game on your birthday was that's going to be tough to top.
It was a love note to me personally. But I do think I'll still have a fun birthday weekend with another playoff victory here. And it's just so still, Greg. I was like, I can't stop talking about it to my wife that I'm going to be 40 and that it's still so fun to me that I get to watch playoff football on my birthday weekend. Like that didn't happen for 20 years of my life. 20 years. So I'm enjoying that. I'm going to enjoy some January football, regardless of the outcome. Can't believe they were able to punch a ticket and get in. So we're going to enjoy every single minute of it. How about you? You got some double fried wings?
Yeah, we got I'm going to be obviously putting together some wings and having a good time that way. We're going to have some people over here. My father-in-law is turning 80. So having an 80th birthday party for him and enjoying some time together here, probably watching the Browns playoff game with a bunch of them. So he and Lisa will be watching the Browns playoff game together, and that'll be special. But my wings are undefeated so far. I can't mess with that. I can't mess that up. So I'm definitely going to be making up some championship caliber wings. You got to do it.
Love it, man.
All right, guys, this has been a ton of fun. It's kind of a weird week. I'm going to keep updating the weather every day, kind of trying to keep what's going on with everything there. But, hopefully this stays reasonably normal and we don't get some weird lake effect event or anything crazy, but we'll figure it out as we go.
Yeah, hopefully not. And then we'll have the air raid guys. I don't know exactly what time they're going, but they'll be going live.
They've been going in the morning. They'll do a pregame show early on Sunday. They usually been doing like 9 a.m. when it's on the early kickoff. So they'll be there at 9. And then Aaron and I will be back here with you guys right after the Bills Steelers game wraps up and hopefully talking about a big time Bills victory.
That's the idea, right? Like we need it. With the way this season has been, getting this ticket, like I said, I'm going to keep hitting on that point. That
nobody wanted us to make it. Now we're here.
And that promotional video that the Bills ran, to me, rang so true of like, play the cards you're dealt. And I know they were talking about the regular season and just taking the cards you were dealt in the regular season, but dude, you've been dealt a hell of a hand here heading into the playoffs that frankly, I don't know that they deserved, even though they were able to win the games they had to and do all the things they had to. I don't know that the Bills deserve to have this path that they have right now. And this is not the best team since you and I have been doing this show. This is not the team that I felt most confident should win a Super Bowl with the way this Bills roster is constructed. But I look at this path and I look at what this team's been through, and I do look at the players on this team and the experience they have. And dude, I see something special brewing, Greg, and I'm getting real excited about it. They better take advantage of this path they've been given. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, there is an enormous opportunity here in front of them, and now they have to capitalize. It's just that simple.
Yep. Take care of business, right, get some home playoff games, and let's roll.
That's right. That's right. I can't wait. This is going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. We were anxious and kind of, biting our nails all season long. Are they going to mess this up? And it now feels kind of surreal that they flipped it around and are here, and it feels not easier, but set up better than I expected. This like unbelievable gauntlet of having to go through, and now all of a sudden it's like home games, and we're the higher seed, and like it just. It's crazy the way that it flipped, but they earned it. They came back. They won the games they needed to. They ended on a 5-game winning streak. They won, 6 out of 7. They finished the way they needed to be able to put this together. And this is now what comes with it. And now you have to capitalize. You have to take advantage. You have to make it matter. And they're in position to do so. So I'm excited. I can't wait. Make sure you're checking out all the good stuff we have going on over at Cover One. But on behalf of our awesome producer, Chris Kepner and Aaron Quinn, I'm Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to the Cover One Buffalo podcast, and we are out.